I don't. Yes. I'm a physical therapist. I'm a physical therapist. I'm doing the talk. No, you're good.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Now, we're talking today about fall prevention. And as you know, falls are a major health risk. And in fact, falls can basically result in bad injuries, anything from bruises to lacerations to fractures and head injuries. Now, I'm going to give you a few statistics, and it's going to blow your mind to realize how dangerous falls are. In fact, 1 out of every 4 adults over the age of 65 falls within a year. Once you get older, the falls increase. Once you're over 70, it's 1 out of every 3 person falls every year. And once you hit 80, you have a 40% chance of falling within that year. Another sobering factor is the fact that if you fall once, you double your chance of falling again within that year. Now, where do most falls occur? Well, most falls occur inside the home. About 76% of the falls occur in the home. And what room do you think most falls occur? Bathroom. Bathroom is number 1, followed by bedroom. Now, the problem that we have is that it increases your morbidity, with serious injuries and your mortality as you fall. In fact, 1 out of every 10 falls results in a major head trauma. And 83% of hip fractures are results of a fall. So they're sobering numbers. And here's what's really sobering, is the fact if you fall, your risk of dying from that fall is 10% within that next couple weeks because of the severity of the fall. And usually it's because of a major fracture or it's a major head injury. But what's even worse is the fact that that number goes from 10% up to 30% of a risk of death within the 3 months after you fall. And that's because you have complications from that fall, such as you fall and fracture a hip, you can end up with infection, you can end up with a pulmonary embolus, you can end up with all sorts of complications from that fall. So, the bottom line is, don't fall. Do everything you possibly can to protect yourself from falling, because it is definitely a major risk factor for injury and death. Now, I'm really proud today to have our speaker, Kristin Lord. Kristin has her doctorate of physical therapy, and she has 12 years experience in geriatric physical therapy. But more importantly, she's my daughter-in-law, and she's Maddie's mom. So Kristin will discuss the risk factors for falls and give tips and advice on how to reduce these risks. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kristin.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Like Ken said, my name is Kristin. I am a physical therapist. He actually got the number wrong. I'm actually going to my 15th year of being a physical therapist. And out of those 15 years, I've been in geriatric senior care for 15 years. It's a huge, huge passion of mine. I have worked anywhere from skilled nursing, acute care, home care, and kind of anywhere in between. I'd say probably 60% of the people I see, I am treating them because they've had either a recent fall or they've had a fall in the past. Like Ken said, falls are just a huge part of, unfortunately, senior care. Everyone falls. If you're feeling willing enough, if you want to raise your hand, who here has fallen? I know I have. Yeah, So it happens, okay? And it's going to happen, unfortunately. As much as I wish I could wrap everyone in bubble wrap, all of my patients, that's just, it's not possible. Like Ken said, once you hit the age of 60, your risk for falls dramatically increases. And there are ways that we can prevent falls. So I am going to cover that, but I'm also going to go over things that we can do if you do fall. Because again, like I said, falls are going to happen. So it's very, very important to know, what do you need to do if you do fall? So I have this handy dandy packet here that most of you have. Risk factors. Ken went over these, so I'm just going to touch on them very briefly. What causes falls? Balance issues, whether you're dizzy, lightheaded, as well as vision issues, whether you wear glasses or don't wear glasses, but your vision is starting to get a little blurry. Medications is a huge one. A lot of my patients go to the doctor's office, they change all their meds, and they just start taking the pills, and then they don't realize that those medications could vastly impact the way that their balance is. Vitamin D insufficiency. This is one that I didn't really know about, but a lot of us have a vitamin D deficiency that we don't know about, but that could also affect or increase our risk for falls. Foot and ankle problems. Again, a lot of us are going to, as we age, are going to start getting osteoporosis, as well as, arthritis in multiple joints, hands, feet, ankles, and that is also going to affect and increase your risk for falls. Home hazards, which we are going to touch on, that is, again, a huge one. So the things that we can't control that affect falls are age. We all age. So that's what's going to happen. Previous falls, like Ken said, once you've had a fall, your risk for future falls skyrockets. Orthostatic hypotension, meaning if you're sitting here, everything feels fine, all of a sudden you stand up and you're like, whoa. That's orthostatic hypotension, meaning that once you change position, your blood pressure drops. It happens to everyone, it doesn't really matter on your age, but that can also increase your risk for falls. Fear of falling. Huge. Once you fall, that I have so many people, I'm so afraid to fall, I'm not going to move. And we'll go over this, but the biggest thing you need to do is start moving more, right? Once we fall, we need to increase our strength and our balance. But fear of falling often increases our risk for falls. So extrinsic factors, things that we can change, things that we can help within, our home and our environment. So like Ken said, the home environment is often where the most falls occur. The biggest thing that I often see is people who have stairs outside the home, inside the home, and they don't have handrails. Sometimes it's not possible to put handrails in, but that's a huge thing that often helps. Having bilateral handrails. Handrails on both sides, right? So if it's just on one side, that's better than nothing, but if we have them on both sides, that obviously improves our balance. Lighting. You want lots of light within your home. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to waste the power or the electric, but making sure once you enter a room, you're flipping a light switch, having that room well lit. Another thing, it's a huge pet peeve of mine, when I go into homes and do a home evaluation, area rugs. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. The reason being is those corners tend to curl up, and then you're walking down and you trip and you fall. Okay, so I know a lot of people say they tack them down, they're fine, but they just increase your falls by so much. Same thing with bath mats. Obviously, you should have bath mats in your bathroom, but we want to make sure those bath mats are not moving, and again, the edges are not curling, because again, you can slip and fall that way. Keeping the floors and bedroom areas and living environments clutter-free, okay? So a lot of times I go into homes and there's tchotchkes and things all over the place, all over the floors. We want to make sure that we're picking those up, putting them in pathways that we are not walking. I think I touched on all that. Another big one, having your eyes checked yearly, as well as your feet checked yearly. Kristin, why do you want your feet checked yearly. That's weird. If you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, it's very important that you are telling your doctor that you're having an eye exam and having your skin checked, because again, you can lose sensation in those fingertips and those hands and those feet that can affect your ability to walk safely. So that is a huge thing that I often recommend to people, having their eyes and feet checked. There is a handy dandy check your risk for falls checklist. We are not going to go through this. You can do that on your own. But it just has a few things of, again, stuff I just touched on, like do you feel these things and why it matters. So very important. All right. So on the back too, there's also one that goes over like bedrooms, stairs, floors. Again, just a checklist. Run through your home when you get home today. Go through your house. See, is your house safe? Is there things that you could change? I'm sure you can find one or two things that you're like, oh, that's something that Kristin mentioned that I need to look at. All right, so now that I've talked for a few minutes, we're going to do an exercise. This is called the chair rise exercise, or I call it an experiment. If you are able, you do not have to do this, but this is what is called a chair rise exercise. So you're going to sit safely in your chair, and what you can either push up from where you're sitting. I do like to have a chair that has handrails on it because it kind of helps you push up, but all you're going to do is you're going to see if you can stand up and sit down. So we're going to all do that together. So on the count of 3, we're all going to stand up and slowly sit down. We're going to do it one more time. Go ahead and stand back up and sit back down. So Kristin, why is this important? So your quadriceps, which is those big walking muscles on the front of your legs, those are a big intrinsic factor of how strong your legs are. So it seems so silly, but the motion of literally standing up and sitting down, you're using the 2 biggest muscles in your legs, your quadriceps, as well as your hamstrings, as well as your glute muscles, your booty muscles, standing up and sitting down. So if you do this exercise, 5 times a day, just literally standing up, sitting down. I usually try to tell people, the goal is to try to do it 5 times in a row. I bet you when you go home and you try this, it's harder than it seems. If 5 is too easy, bump it up by 1 or 2. But this is extremely, extremely easy exercise to do to work on those big balance muscles. So that's your homework. All right, a little bit more homework. So the next 2 pages I have for you are simple, basic exercises that you can do at home. Okay, a lot of times I give people these exercises, and they're like, Kristin, it's so overwhelming. I don't have time. It's just, there's too much. My grandkids are coming over. I'm too tired. I'm afraid of falling. I don't want to move. So usually what I tell people is take 1 or 2 of these exercises. You can do them in front of the television. You can do them when you wake up, before bed. It doesn't really matter. Do 2 at a time. You don't have to do all of them. There are standing exercises as well as seated exercises. If the standing ones are too difficult, you can easily switch to the seated ones. We're actually going to go over the seated ones just because it's a little easier. I know you're kind of cramped with space and stuff, so if you can't do these with the whole range of motion, don't worry about it. So first one, super easy, seated marching, okay? So you do up and down, super easy, not rocket science. So what is this working? Again, working your glutes, your hamstrings, your quadriceps, extremely good for that ability to stand up and sit down, okay? Next one, leg extension. So again, each exercise we want to do between 10 to 15 times. You want to make sure that you get the full range of motion, that we're not doing these like little kicks. That doesn't do anything. Same thing with speed. That's momentum. So really, if you're truly doing these to full maximum potential, you want to count 1, 2, 3. Again, slower is better. I feel like a lot of people are like, well, I want to do them quickly. I want to get them over with. Well, if that's the case, if you don't have much time, I'd rather you bump down the repetitions, only do 5, but do them slowly, okay? Next one is heel toe raises. Does anyone other than Ken know why these are the most important exercise you can do? Bringing your toes up and down. Prevents blood clots, okay? So a lot of times as we get older, we become more sedentary, okay? We don't get up as much as we used to. So our blood tends to pool down into our ankles. So if you've noticed, if you've ever had swelling in your feet and ankles, okay, that's often why. It's because we're not moving around as much. As well as our arteries and our veins start to close up a little bit, so the heart's having to work harder and harder to get that blood pumped back up to where it needs to be. So a lot of times I tell my patients, the most important thing you can do while you're watching television, as soon as those commercials come on, start tapping those toes, okay? It's even better if you can prop your feet up to do it. Makes your job a little bit less hard. But again, that's pumping that blood that's pooling down in our feet back up to the heart where it needs to be to distribute back through the body. So that's the easiest exercise, but it's most important. And the last one for all the women who want skinny thighs. So you put your feet together, your knees together. You can do knees apart, knees together. So again, that's working the inside and the outside of our legs, okay? So again, super important when we stand up, we're contracting that muscle, and when we sit back down again, there's a contraction there. So the standing ones are the same way. I won't go over them, but I often tell people when you were doing standing exercises, first start with holding on, whether to a chair, countertops, usually pretty good because that's a little bit higher, which I like. But anywhere where, like, if you start to lose your balance, you can quickly hold on. If you're like, Kristin, that's too easy, start doing fingertips, right? So if we start doing marching, you have a fingertip. Or if you're really advanced, you can do it one-handed, okay? So that's kind of the progression that I give my patients on how to do anywhere from seated to standing exercises. So now that we've gone over stuff to prevent falls, what happens if we do fall, right? I know we don't like to think about it and talk about it, but it's going to happen. Unfortunately, it's going to happen to all of us. So the very first thing, whether you fall here at Atonement or at home or out in the community, the very first thing once you fall is probably the hardest one, but it's to stay calm, right? I mean, we need to just stay put, even if it's just for a minute. I usually tell people, stay where you are for a minute, take a deep breath, assess the situation, okay? You need to, number one, assess your surroundings. Where are you, and is there help available? Number two, assess your body. Are we bleeding? Okay, obviously if we're bleeding, that's a little bit more serious. Or is anything hurting? Any pain associated with that? If the answer is yes, again, you just kind of want to stay put. Okay, we need to calm down our body's reaction to it's fight or flight, right? We're down on the floor, our initial reaction is like, oh my God, is somebody looking at me? I want to jump up and run. No, you want to stay put where you are. So if you are not injured, let's say you're walking in your bedroom, you fall, you kind of catch your breath, you're like, that was silly, I am not bleeding, I do not have any pain, I am not dizzy or lightheaded. What you need to do is be able to safely, if you are able to do so, get to a chair, get to the nearest sofa, anywhere that's a stable surface, okay? And you want to sit in that surface. We'll go over if you cannot safely get to that, but if you're able to safely sit, do so. The next one is something that no one likes to do. You need to tell someone, right? Even if you are not injured, you need to tell someone. Whether it's family or your doctor, you need to tell someone right away that you fell, okay? Again, falls happen, but no one's going to be able to help you if they don't know that it happened. So if you are injured, so you're laying on the floor, you have pain in your hip, you're feeling dizzy and lightheaded, you're feeling nauseous, you're not sure of what to do, okay, you need to stay put, right? We don't want to start moving, different joints and different areas of the body if we are truly having these symptoms that could actually make it worse, okay? Now, it's not a good thing if you fall, but it's a good thing if you fall and somebody's around, right? They can be watching you, they can call 911, they can help you, but there's often times you're gonna fall and nobody is around. You might be bleeding, you might be dizzy, you might be nauseous, and be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? That's when these newfangled smart watches and lifeline devices come in pretty darn handy. I remember my grandmother, she was a very proud Catholic woman, and she was getting into her 80s, and my aunt said, you're gonna wear one of those lifeline pendants. And she goes, yeah, I'll wear it. Well, every time my aunt came to visit her, the lifeline pendant was on the dresser. She was never wearing it because she didn't like the way it looked. The biggest thing was she didn't want to bother anyone. She didn't want to call for help if she fell. And I get it. Like, again, we don't want to be a bother. But if it becomes life or death and that pendant is sitting on the dresser, it's not going to be doing you any good, right? Because I guarantee if you're on the floor with a broken hip, you're not crawling over to the dresser, okay? And the last thing that we want to do is be laying on the floor injured, because that can make your risk for long-term injury much, much greater. These newfangled smartwatches, I feel like more and more people are more willing to use them versus the pendant, which, I don't know, they hide the button really well now. But a lot more people are willing to wear the watches. I'm only familiar with the Apple Watch, but I do know the Samsung watches do also have the fall detection. So if you trip and fall, I've actually done this before, it'll go off and it'll ask if it needs to call for 911 assistance. The other nice thing too is if you trip and fall, you don't need 911, but you're like, hey, Siri, call daughter, call Sally. It can call a family member or whoever, and you can call them to, help you assess the situation. So that is a big thing that I tell people.
Sorry, I can't only call one.
See? But it's a really good thing to have, and especially, when the event happens, you don't have to think about it. It's right on your wrist or around your neck. Again, biggest takeaway, and I just touched on this, is whether you have fallen and hurt yourself or whether you've fallen and not hurt yourself, again, telling someone. So many of my patients that I see every single day, one of my very first things when I do my evaluation is ask them, how many times have you fallen within the year? And they'll say, I don't know, 5. Well, then when I call their family member to, talk with them, they're like, I said, Mrs. Smith said she's fallen about 5 times. And the daughter's like, I didn't know that she fell 5 times. She only told me she fell once. So again, I get it, right? We don't want to bother our families. We don't want to be a burden. But honestly, when you let families know, when you let your doctor know, and you're truthful about them, there's ways that we can help with falls. Whether it's doing simple exercises, whether it's a medication change, whether it's getting your eyes and your feet checked. So falls are just as important as, daily screening or yearly screenings, or anytime that you go for your yearly checkup, is being honest and truthful about how many times you've fallen. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Any questions? That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Kristin, I have two questions. Can you talk about shoes? What
Sure.
type of shoes you wear? And a lot of people wear stocking feet and they slip on the floor.
Sure.
And number 2, a lot of people have pets, and you have to be so careful and diligent about where that pet is, because a lot of people fall over their dog or their cat.
Shoes are extremely important. Any closed-toed shoe is probably better than walking in stocking feet. Even those socks that have the little grippers on them. So many of my patients, I have my non-skid socks on. They are not non-skid. So please, 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 always wear closed-toed shoes. People ask me about slippers. Can I wear my slippers? Yes and no. There are slippers now that actually have a sole to them. You always want to back to your slipper, so you don't want those big fluffy, bunny slippers, walking up and down your halls. You want a nice form-fitting slipper that does have a sole and does have a back. People ask me what type of tennis shoe. You don't need to go out and buy $200 tennis shoes. A lot of my patients love Skechers. They're usually a pretty good price point, but honestly, Walmart or Target have just as good as tennis shoes as going to somewhere that's sells the high-end stuff. So as long as it's closed-toed. Pets, that's a tricky one. I mean, a lot of us have pets. Lord knows I have tripped over my dogs many, many times. Again, making sure that if you are taking your dog outside for a walk, making sure that you can handle your animal. That's extremely important. If we're realizing that, Benji is really pulling on the leash, it might be time to, ask a family member, like, hey, does the dog need training, or does she need more extra, like, what's happening? Making sure, again, that your areas are well lit so you know where your animal is at. If you get out of bed at nighttime to use the bathroom, flipping that light switch on, because, the dog might be laying right there, you get out of bed, you could fall. So, yeah, those are... Any other questions? Yes, Marion.
What about carpeting versus hardwood floors?
Oh, that's a good question.
Did everybody hear that? Carpeting
versus hardwood floors. Carpeting, obviously, is much non-slip, so that's awesome. But a lot of us have hardwood floors, and that's where those area rugs come in, because a lot of people put area rugs on hardwood floors. So I do have a love-hate relationship with the rugs, because I get it. So with the hardwood floors, you want to especially make sure you're wearing shoes at all times, or the slipper with the back. Yeah, so it depends on the pile of the carpet. So if it's a lower pile, meaning it's close, like it's not super fluffy, you have more stability. When it's a fluffier carpet, it can make you a little off balance. So a lot of times it's just kind of knowing your environment. I'm certainly not going to go into a home and be like, you got to rip all the carpet up. It's not, I don't like it. So it's kind of finding what works for you. If you're finding that the carpet is truly making you off balance, it might mean that you have to make a change, or just make sure that you're wearing shoes that give you more stability.
Operated light that you can place in specific areas, especially in the bedroom.
Okay.
At night, that motion, the minute your legs come over the side of the bed, the light goes on.
Yeah.
And just have to replace the batteries.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. Night lights or battery or motion activated lights now, there's so many on Amazon that they're pennies. They're very, very inexpensive. So that way, again, when in the middle of the night when you have to use the bathroom, you don't have to think about turning on the light. As soon as you get out of bed, light goes on. You get back into bed, light goes off. So that's a really good point of having those maybe motion censored lighting, so that when you're having those moments of you're not quite awake yet, you don't have to think about turning on and off the lights.
Is this ready to go? I was at a swim meet not too long ago at one of the, not local school in Berks County, but in Lancaster County. And their pool had been closed for almost 2 years while it was renovated. So now it's fixed up and fancy and all that, but no railings for the bleachers. Now, isn't that something that OSHA would have to sign off on? And I couldn't, due to a fall 6 years ago, I really couldn't go up the bleachers because I had to have something to hold on to. And it's like nobody wanted to hear that.
So I can't speak on OSHA, but I absolutely kudos to you recognizing that that was possibly like an increased risk for falls. The only thing that I can kind of recommend in that situation, a lot of times they'll have like the first row bleachers, or ask one of the staff for a chair, a folding chair that you can sit on.
If I could have been seated down front, that wouldn't have been a problem, but it was pretty full.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
yeah.
a real good swim meet. Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's much, like you said, it would have been much easier with handrails.
somebody has to sign off on that. Yeah, okay, thank you.
I'd like to mention that handrails should have a return to the wall because you can catch a robe or a purse or something when you're walking up and then cause you to fall.
Yes, absolutely. So you want to make sure, kind of what he's saying, that it's always closed off. I can't tell you how many times I've personally caught myself going up the stairs and it catches you. So just having that bend in the railing. Another thing too, I did mention, a lot of times, especially homes in Pennsylvania, a lot of people live in row homes or very older homes that have their really narrow, steep staircases straight up and down. Stair glides are another good option for people who have trouble with stairs. There's a lot of different companies now. I feel like it's a little bit more budget friendly option of that if you can't go up and down the stairs and you absolutely need to go up the stairs, a stair glide is an option. Another thing people don't think about with stairs, bringing your bedroom down to the first floor. So many of my patients, Kristin, I can't do that. I don't want my bed in the living room. Well, no one does. But again, if it's truly, and it might even be temporary, but if you're able to bring your bedroom down to the first floor due to weakness or recent fall or anything like that, that is always an option, so that in the interim of while you're healing or anything like that, you do not have to go up and down the stairs to increase your risk for falls. No. That's a whole nother talk, is Medicare, and I'm not going to go into that. That is something that you'd have to look into for your insurance provider, as well as because there's Medicare A through Z, so you'd have to look into that, but oftentimes no.
I just wanted to add on to the robe comment that Scott just made. I have a new robe, and it's got all this voluminous, arm sleeves, and that tie, that gets caught on things. And years ago, our family lost an elderly family friend because she had one of those robes, and as she was cooking breakfast, it caught on fire.
Yeah.
And so, they're not our friends. Roll them up or do whatever you need to do, get rid of it, and get something that's more close-fitting.
Yeah, and I tell a lot of my patients that again, along with those I don't like those bunny slippers, those big puffy ones. Same thing with robes. You want something that's very close-fitting. I know a lot of, again, Pennsylvania is like their house coat. They want to stay warm. Just make sure that, if it's too big, you're taking it on and off while you're cooking or going to the bathroom or going up and down stairs, so that you're not increasing your risk for falls.
Hi. Can we finish your thought? If I am alone and I do fall, how do I get up from the floor?
So
Please.
there is what you want to do, if you are able, to try to, I should have been in my church clothes for this, but to try to slowly find the closest stationary object, whether it's a chair, whether it's a sofa. And it's not necessarily that you need to get up to sit on it. If you are able to get up and sit, that's great. But a lot of times just sitting up and propping against, okay, that's going to kind of slowly lower our heart rate. You're able to take a deep breath. Trying to locate where your phone is. Now, if your phone is, in a different room, that's not going to be any help for you. If you have a watch, like I said, using that watch to help call family members. Again, that's why I'm a huge advocate of these watches and pendants. If not, I've had people keep kind of like garage door openers or anything close to them so they can open a garage door, you know, to maybe see if a neighbor is passing by. Also, having a schedule with family to check on you, right? You know, as we age, we should have family, hopefully family or friends coming to check on us just to make sure that we're okay. It's just very, very important that we're not alone for long periods of time. Not that they have to babysit you, but just checking in to make sure everything is okay. So those are kind of my recommendations. That's where it gets tricky. If you don't have any type of way to notify anyone, it's tough, right? Because we don't have anything. So that's why I'm just a huge advocate of the watches or the pendants, so that if you do fall, you don't have to worry about dragging yourself across the floor trying to get to a phone or anything like that.
In conclusion, we've had too many people within this congregation fall within the last 6 months. So that's why we wanted to put on this presentation. And the handout that Kristin gave is exceptional, and I want you to take it home, go through it. Don't put it on your dresser or on your kitchen cabinet. You know, go through it, look at it, do the exercises, and a couple things, as Kristin already mentioned. If you're physically fit and your muscles are in pretty good shape, you reduce your risk of falling significantly. So the trick is to stay active, exercise, keep these muscles strong, and follow the tips and the tricks that Kristin has mentioned today. And I want you to be very, very diligent on preventing falls, because, you know, they are a major health risk and a major risk of complications and death if you don't pay attention. So I'd like to thank Kristin for giving this speech today, and thank you so much.